The best way to describe build, operate, transfer, or a public-private partnership is the private sector knows how to get work done and do it well and do it efficiently. And this state statute really provides an opportunity for that type of a delivery model to show up in public work. So we are privately developing property for a public entity at the end of the day.
Pull up a chair, bring the vision you're chasing. Look over the blueprints, years in the making. From planning to progress and growth that will last. Come on, let's build and enable at the inside table. At the inside table.
Hey, my name's Tim. Thank you for clicking on this today and listening to us. We've just been happy to have conversations around real estate development and construction has been my passion for years. So here at Veritas, we're also passionate about that. And so what you're going to hear is just some general conversations that we've had about certain topics within this framework over the last several months. We hope you enjoy these. We hope you came to learn today. If you need some more information, we'll get you some information at the end of this as we close this thing out. But enjoy this conversation. Well, hey, Mark, thanks for joining me today. You've been here before, so we'll skip the introductions. But real briefly, Mark is one of our vice presidents of corporate development. And a lot of what you and I do is we spend a lot of our time educating our clients on different project delivery methods that are available to them. This tends to be one of the very first steps in a public project. And so before we jump into this one today specifically, just some background. In that there are between, well, depending on how you look at it, maybe 6 or 7 different public statutes by which public entities must subscribe in order to deliver a public or capital project. We'll go through all of them, at least in one episode, right? We're going to go through each one of those things and give it the time it deserves. But today, I wanted to start with one of the ones that we get the most questions about, which is Indiana Code 523, or often referred to as the Public-Private Partnership Statute in the Indiana Code, probably more affectionately referred to as BOT, or by some people, BOT. Right. So this is the one we get the most questions about. It's certainly the most talked about in the market as things begin to change consistently. So what I wanted to do today is spend a little bit of time just walking through this statute and understanding what the requirements are. And then maybe we talk a little bit about where people are beginning to get confused a little bit, what are some of the most questions we have on it, as well as where do we see it going in the future, what are the promises behind it, what's good about it, maybe what needs to be tweaked a little bit as we kind of think through some of the pluses and minuses here. But I'll say too that I don't believe personally that there's a statute that's a silver bullet. I don't think there's one statute that's going to solve every problem or challenge that a city or town or a unit of government can face. I think each one needs to be analyzed a little bit differently and a little bit separately depending upon risk that they're comfortable with, what their budget looks like, what their schedule looks like, and maybe it's 523, but maybe it's 532 or something else that we can get into a little bit later. So why don't you, if you could, kind of lead us into this discussion, just kind of give us the real quick snapshot of what is the 523 statute.
Sure. So I guess before jumping too far into it, I am not an attorney. So for all of those municipalities that are listening to this, we strongly encourage the engagement of your legal counsel in the interpretation of state statute. Fortunately, I see 523 is only 26 pages long, and half of that's definitions. So it's a relatively short state
I'd say
statute.
probably about 5 pages of real content in this whole thing.
So there are some things that legal counsel will point to a circular engagement in regards to certain definitions, but we'll let those legal counsels engage in that conversation as we're exploring these statutes. So the best way to describe build, operate, transfer, or a public-private partnership is the private sector knows how to get work done and do it well and do it efficiently. And this state statute really provides an opportunity for that type of a delivery model to show up in public work. So we are privately developing property for a public entity at the end of the day. is the 30,000-foot view of how that's done. IC 523 was originally crafted for the Hoosier Dome when the Colts or the Ravens came in from Baltimore and the city needed to respond and build.
It was the Colts, by the way.
It was still, yeah, I'm the sports guy at the company. So when the Colts came, the Indianapolis responded by using this statute or creating this statute to do the Hoosier Dome. It was the Hoosier Dome then, not the RCA.
That's the story
Dome.
I've been told anyway, yeah.
And so it was specifically authored for Marion County. It was used and was put on the shelf, and then it was not really re-engaged until they started talking about a new criminal justice campus for the city of Indianapolis. They dusted off the state statute. This is my understanding of the history on it. Made it available to all municipalities in Indiana through the adoption of the resolution. So, as municipalities are exploring the use of a BOT, that first step is the adoption of a resolution by the governing body. The resolution itself seems to be simple. It could be as simple as we're going to use this delivery method for public works and not be specific on the project that we're doing it for. Or some municipalities will look at it as, well, I need to build a fire station. I'm going to do a resolution to use BOT for a fire station. So that's really up to the municipality. It doesn't force you to do anything. The resolution doesn't. So we kind of recommend, well, go ahead and broadly adopt it so that you have this tool in your toolbox for future projects.
So to clarify that, the statute requires that the local governing body, the policymakers, the elected officials, whoever it is, adopt the statute.
Sure.
Sort of a weird provision in that it's a statute already, but they have to adopt it for its use. And there's probably a couple other examples of that throughout the state statutes. But so they have to adopt it. And by adopting it, it doesn't commit them to anything. It doesn't commit them to even using it. It just allows them, per the statute, to use it. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
So it's also my understanding then that if a community wants to use it, say a parks department wanted to use it, their own board could adopt the statute, but then the use of that statute would only be limited to the parks board. If the city council adopted it, on the other hand, it could be applicable to any department within the city.
Yeah,
so
I believe it ties back to the fiscal body. So even if the parks board would adopt it, the fiscal body of the parks board, which would be probably city council, would need to adopt the resolution at the end of the day. Right. Similarly, I believe I know for libraries, like they're not their own fiscal body. They go to the county council or city council. So that fiscal body would have to adopt the resolution
on their behalf.
Okay. Not that they have a say in the matter on whether or not a school or a library gets to use it, but because it's the fiscal body, they have the authority to have the authority and responsibility to do that.
Okay.
But then you'd have your school board and your, at least the library board. I think school boards are different. I think the school board can adopt the resolution because they are a separate entity and
have their own fiscal body. Yeah, they're a taxing unit, and so therefore they can do it. Okay, so we've got the statute piece of it, and I don't want to go into the rest of the details quite yet, but let's get to the point of with the client. Like, how did we get to this point? Like, what has brought us to this point? What are the decisions that have been made to say, hey, let's at least get this thing adopted so that we can use it if we want to? Like, help me understand the thinking behind what a mayor or a city or town or manager or library director, anybody's thinking at this point in order to get them to this point.
Usually at this point in time, by the time we've gotten to a decision in regards to a project delivery method, we've talked about how project delivery methods allocate risk. One of the benefits to a public-private partnership is that the municipality is shifting quite a bit of risk on to the developer. So we've had a lot of the conversations around what that risk is, who's taking responsibility for the risk, what maybe the municipality may be giving up for that risk. I don't know that they give up much if it's done well. But then we step into a request for proposal process. This usually takes two forms with our clients. Sometimes we'll start a RFP for a design firm to really understand what the vision is. If we're building a fire station or a library, what's that big vision? What's the criteria that we want to kind of understand before moving into a BOT agreement?
which, to clarify, there is no statute that requires you to issue an RFP for
not public.
an architect,
Sure.
right? Those are professional services that can be negotiated privately if you wanted to.
Yes.
And that's not part of the 523 statute. What you're saying is that oftentimes, in order to clarify the project that we're trying to identify the project, I should say, with some clarity, we often see our clients hiring a design firm first.
Yes.
At least doing some, I don't know what the right term is, but conceptual and or programming documents to create at least that everybody, when they get to this RFQP that you're going to talk about here in a minute, begins to compare apples to apples and not something that is everybody's own creation and design of what this fire station could be or whatever this public project is.
On August 13th, the Veritas Group is hosting the Insight Summit 2026 at the Alexander Hotel in downtown Indianapolis. This is a one-day in-person gathering designed for mayors, city and county officials, planners, engineers, economic development leaders, and community advocates who are actively shaping Indiana's future. The day is built around real-world insight from Veritas Group-led projects across the state, focusing on what's actually working in infrastructure, public space development, and economic growth. Whether you're driving capital projects, navigating growth challenges, or building strategic partnerships, attendees will leave with actionable insights, expanded networks, and a clearer vision for delivering lasting community impact. Learn more and register at theveritasgroup.com/insight.
Before we go on to the RFQ, because it is really important to talk about that and what has to be in that and how we build those out, let's go back to this risk conversation. So briefly, why would somebody choose the 523 statute to mitigate risk?
There are several areas of risk that, and even how you structure your BOT can assume risk and defer risk. One of the things I was going to jump into in regards to the RFP for design, and I'll finish on this topic, but even the design, the way we look at design during the BOT mitigates or can assume or mitigate risk. But there's the risk that we're avoiding in regards to the public competitive bidding market. So those entities that respond to a public works project going through 36-112 to compete for work. There is risk associated with what people call unforeseen conditions, but attorneys like to say undiscoverable conditions, which are in fact two different things. But understanding the risks associated with the site that we're building on, or the potential errors of parties through the process. From a financial risk standpoint, right, the municipality has a mechanism or a funding or revenue stream that they are paying for the overall project on, but they're not going to be subject to fluctuations in the market because through the BOT, we're going to get a guaranteed maximum price. So those are kind of the big ways that we are mitigating risk there. The design side of things, some attorneys and some municipalities want to have the design team underneath the BOT agreement, right? So then now we've got the owner and the developers holding the contracts for the architect and the construction team. The developer is now responsible for all of the potential errors and omissions and costs associated with the design process. So it's no longer on the municipality's hands to negotiate that risk or worry about that risk. So if there's challenges on the project, the owner can say, you know what, that's an errors and omissions challenge. Contractor, you've got to battle with your own team. I'm not taking on that risk. So it really gets you out of this situation of, well, the design team says this, and the construction team says this. Client owner, you're the middleman, and so now you've got to be somewhat of a mediator in regards to the challenges that both teams present. So
in that case, it puts it all onto the quote unquote developer, which is mentioned in the statute that comes in. It is that contracting agency that's going to control the whole project. Yeah. Before we move on, I do want to kind of hover over this risk component a little bit, because I think there's an important thing that we need to talk about, which is one of the reasons you would select the 523 statute is to kind of move the whole risk of the entire project off of your balance sheet or off of your risk. Right. I don't know what you call it, but your risk ledger, right? If you had one, over to a developer, because what happens here, I think, as I read the statute, and again, not attorneys, but, is that what you're doing is you're basically the community or the institution is buying a completed project.
Sure.
Right. You're not buying land and then doing a public, and a design bid build project where all of a sudden you have to go out and design it and then you have to bid it and then you build it and then you're responsible. Should there be an accident, should there be something that happens on that site, a project delivery delay, a labor shortage, anything that happens on that site is really on you as the community, which is why we often see multiple change order after change order after change order on these projects. And you already mentioned a GMP here, which we'll get to in a minute, but in the BOT specifically, the 523 statute, a project that's done under that statute, really you're buying the completed product. And so you have, as a community, you have control over the architect and the designers to get what you want. And then the contractor, developer is going to price it for you. And through that entire process, often called the scoping period, you are interacting with the whole design and construction team to make sure that you're getting exactly what you want. In some cases, probably when it's done well and right, you haven't even paid for that work yet.
Yeah.
You are kind of marching down the road, but you haven't even taken a decision to your fiscal body, your council, or whoever it is, the approving body, until you actually have a fully designed project, at least mostly designed project with a guaranteed budget. And really what that does is once this whole thing goes through and you go through the statute here and we get to that contract, it really puts all of the risk and all the liability on the developer, the contractor who's going to come in and build that project. So again, the ones I mentioned before, any bodily injury, any issue or harm, any delay, construction delay or material delay or a labor shortage or whatever falls, the risk all gets moved to the side of the developer instead of the community. Doesn't mean your project's going to necessarily be on time because they may not be able to mitigate it well, but it's still, if that costs dollars, you're locked in. Right. So that is one of the big risk changes that I see. And really this moves it more from a public bid or public work project in the statute to a public purchase. And really kind of begins to reshape and reframe how we think about this statute and how it delivers projects. So, all right, now we're at the RFQP.
RFQP.
Yeah. So what does that mean?
So this is a request for qualifications process, right? So you're not, as part of that process, you're not going to you may see a fee structure if you put it in the criteria. The statute is pretty clear about the minimum requirements that you want to put in your request for qualifications. But there are certain things that we like to have our clients add to that process in regards to how the process is going to operate in the scoping period. But we could go really into the weeds on the RFP itself, but I'm not going to do that today. But generally speaking, we're gonna form a request for qualifications based off of the criteria of the statute and whatever additional criteria the municipality wants to add. It does require legal notice. We've got, I think, 2 legal notices, 7 days apart. Second one, no more than 7 days in advance of receipt of those responses. We receive those proposals. We typically like to run this over the course of about a month, right? Give the community the opportunity, or interested parties the opportunity to put together their best foot and propose that to the municipality. So put their best foot forward. We receive those responses. We evaluate them. The statute is pretty clear that you have to have scoring criteria. So that's also spelled out in statute. So we evaluate those responses based off of that criteria. When I say we evaluate it, Veritas as an owner's representative is not a scoring entity. We just help administer the process. So we help our clients navigate that and determine who is the most responsive proposer. And effectively, that process satisfies the competitive bidding process for the build operator for the public-private partnership. Even though we don't know what the guaranteed maximum price is, right? But at this point in time, we've still not assumed any risk of anything, right? This is just, these are the players in the market. This person seems to be the most qualified. The steering committee that we've formed in advance of this process with the municipality is going to make a recommendation to the fiscal body. This is not necessarily a formal process. It's a recommendation that we have for our clients, is that we document who we think we're moving into scoping with. The municipalities council may want to do a scoping agreement, which is fine and great. A lot of communities are not even engaging in a scoping agreement. They're entering a gentleman's agreement into that scoping period. We get to that guaranteed maximum price and we go to the public hearing. So that's broadly what that process looks like. But I think one of the critical things that I'm seeing, A, with our projects, but then B, with projects that we get engaged in regards to, hey, how are you doing these processes, is that we must, in the RFP or request for qualifications, set an expectation in regards to transparency and scoping. We have heard of challenges of not knowing how the sausage is made or what's in the number and getting to a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price, and really not knowing what that means or what's in the number. So we advocate for transparency through the entirety of the process.
Yeah, good. I think you made some really good points there on how kind of that decision is made. I would still encourage our listeners to go consult your attorney, because there are some very specific deadlines and notice requirements and things throughout the statute that say you have to notice so many days in advance of these different public hearings and whatnot. So make sure those boxes are all checked. When we do these projects for our clients, we're certainly working alongside of their local attorney and financial advisors to make sure that we're in lockstep with their team and understanding how this works. Hey, thanks for listening today. Thanks for clicking on this and diving in a little bit deeper. We hope you learned something today. And if you did, or you want more information, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to connect you with the right people to get you the answers that you need. But really help you leave with one thing in mind, is that our goal here at Veritas is to renew communities through great projects and great people. I think all of these conversations have shown that in some way or another. So thanks for listening today, and catch up with us next time.